Good evening and welcome to Freewheeling. Yes, we had a little bit of a hiccup there because I was having audio issues on this thing, and that's what happens when you go live, isn't it? Because you're not prepared for some of the nice little glitches, but hopefully that adds a little spice to the proceedings. And I shouldn't tell you more about that. I should, in fact, first introduce you to my guest today. Now, many of you will already know him, so he really does not need an introduction, especially for all of us in the automobile fraternity. He's someone that we've been very proud of, and is someone who has, given us plenty of reasons to be very, very proud. And without much further ado, then let me bring in my guest, and there he is. That is Karun Chandhok. Karun, good evening or good afternoon for you.
Yeah, nice to join you, Sid, virtually. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've managed to get onto any form of your car and bike show. I've been unfortunately missing your awards for the last couple of years. But yeah, always good to chat.
It is, and in fact, yes, we have that other special association, Karun, very regularly on our jury, of course, for the CNB Awards. But it goes well beyond that, of course. I mean, I've lost track of how many years we've known each other now, and it's what I said at the start is so true. That you've actually given us so much reason to smile and be proud. And speaking of which, I can see that your dad's part of this and he's watching because I can see that he's signed in and very patiently was hanging on for this to start. Lots of people, in fact, have signed in, and you want to say hello quickly to everyone?
Yeah, I mean it's a strange time we're living in at the moment. We're all apart, but sort of together in this strange world, I guess, that we've got going on. But hopefully everyone's been able to stay healthy and stay safe, and the storm can pass. Fingers crossed, fairly soon for everyone around the world.
That's true. Can't wait for that, in fact, to end. I see that you have a whole lot of books and things behind you there, but also the
Yeah.
helmet. So which one is that? Which specific helmet is that? The one up there?
The one in that corner there is from when I drove in F1 in 2011 with Lotus. The one over my shoulder, if I lean this
Yeah.
way, is when I first came to race in Europe in 2002 in Formula 3. So yeah, the trophy I got on the shelf, that's from Monaco. That's a very special one for me. Being on the podium in Monaco is something you never forget. So yeah, that's the one that made its way into the living room.
In fact, well, I'm not surprised at all for you to say that. But talk us through that. Actually, I mean, I assume we'd come to this part later, but let me get straight to it. The career highs. I mean, there have been so many, but if you were to just sort of count the top few.
I'd say the top three, if I may. I think first one I'd say is winning the GP2 race at Spa in 2007. It was really important for me because 2004 and 5 were difficult years. We didn't really have a budget to do anything properly. Sporadic races in different championships. And 2006, I went back to Asia to do a season of racing out there. Won the championship there, but had no real leads or budget to carry on. And then it all came together quite late in GP2, and I became a Red Bull test driver in
Yeah.
F1, and then won a race at Spa, of all places, a very iconic track, just before the Grand Prix. And that was a big day. It was a big relief, to put myself back on the map and on the path on European racing, really. So I'd say that's the first one. First Grand Prix, of course. I think it was a dream come true, right? As a kid growing up, all I ever wanted to do was be a Formula One driver and to go to Bahrain. And actually, said when I got to the track on Thursday, the first other driver I met was Michael Schumacher, and I'll never forget that. He was a seven-time world champion. He rejoined Mercedes,
Yeah.
and that was going to be his first race of his comeback. And he took 5 minutes out of his day to. I was a nobody, right? He was the guy. I had the post on the wall, but he took time to spend a few minutes with me, get to know me, say welcome to F1, wish me luck, and it was really special. So yeah, that was very, very, very cool as a highlight. And I think the third one was Le Mans 2012, to be the first Indian racing in Le Mans. I know you were there along with several of our friends from the auto world. And that was very cool because I don't know if you remember, they play the national anthem of every driver. And for whatever reason that year, they play the Indian national anthem first. And, you've got 300,000 people there, more than Eden Gardens and Firoz Shah Kotla put together,
Yeah.
and they were all hearing the Indian national anthem, which was there because I was in the race, which was yeah, it was a real goosebumps moment.
So while you were speaking about that, I was showing off some of those pictures that we had earlier talked about at Le Mans. first where you were showing us around. Well, first of course posing next to the car, all of us kneeling next to it, and then with Hormaz and myself. And the second, of course, was where you were walking us around and showing us the garage and everything that was happening inside. So, yeah, it was goosebumps for I think many of us. The fact that well, the national anthem playing to begin with, and then of course the fact that you were out there actually racing. I can of course carry on quoting many others, which even I probably would consider as your big highs. And what's interesting is how your career has evolved. I mean, you haven't done that one thing and then sort of fizzled out. You've always moved on to something else, and it's always stayed true to the sport that you love.
Yeah, I've been very lucky, very fortunate to have these opportunities. But also, I was very conscious of the fact that you have to look broadly in the sport. I think in any sport really, things can change very quickly. Career paths can change very quickly. Circumstances change, so you have to be flexible and looking for other opportunities. And over time, I went through a phase where it was 100% on the driving. Then I started doing some TV stuff on the side, and now the TV commitments have almost overtaken the driving commitments. But it still means I'm actively involved in the sport, and it's opened up other doors. I'm now designing racetracks. I'm managing young Indian drivers. I'm doing other projects of consultancy work. So
Yeah.
it means that I'm still very lucky to have the opportunity to work with people at the very top of our sport, which is amazing.
No, but at what point did you decide to move base to the UK? I mean, that happened years ago.
Yeah, it was 2002. My dad and I remember we were on a Lufthansa flight, row 61, and we landed here on the 1st of February 2002 in the deep, dark depths of the winter. And yeah, that was to come and race in Formula 3. But, it's a funny one because I went from a city of 11 million people in Madras to a town of 11,000 in Brackley, in near Silverstone, which is, of course, the home of motorsport here. Didn't know anybody, but at that stage, you're young, 18 years old, you're motivated, you're chasing that dream of F1, and you would charge through walls. You'd go running in the cold winter day to go training, and it was a tough time. Don't get me wrong. To make that shift in terms of lifestyle, to leave home and come here and live on my own, but. It was also, I think I grew up about 5 years in that first year of being away.
I can understand that totally. Like I mentioned earlier, I think I saw that your dad's online right now. So, Vicky sir, if you're watching, then type out a little message so I know you're still watching. And I think we've had so many times when we've watched races with him because he's always been there, right? He's always been with you, and as you mentioned, I mean, he was with you on that flight, the fateful flight as well. That now, when you look back, do you see that as a huge advantage? The fact that he was also so involved in this.
Yeah, I mean, look, it was a full family commitment. At the end of the day, the financial commitment to going racing was huge.
Yeah.
There was a lot of sacrifices from both of my parents, and it's a huge effort. My brother was in school and growing up, but unfortunately, in many ways for him, so much of the attention was on me, but he was there to support and help. So it was a huge effort all around. I think my dad, for him, obviously he raced and rallied a lot in his days, but never had the opportunity to really do much outside of India. I think he went to Sri Lanka a few times, but that was it. So I think he's enjoyed the journey as much as I have. It's been challenging. We've collectively all had some very, very tough times, but I think on the whole, when we sit back, this is now 20 years since this journey began. I started racing in 2000. I think on the whole, the highs have been much more than the lows. We've all got a lot of joy and satisfaction out of this entire journey of motorsport.
That's no, I again now I'm getting goosebumps just listening to you talk about all of it. The footage that you've sent me of your Formula One days, is that the same Monaco race?
No, I think I can't
Let me play
actually see
that.
the footage here, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I've raced in Monaco on 5 occasions. The trophy is from GP2 when I finished third in 2008. It is, listen, it's a magical race. It's funny actually. People think of Monaco of all the boats and the glamour and all that. I actually hated all of that. It's all of that was just distraction for me. The best part was when they locked up all of these people who were hungover and drunk and sent them away back to their hotel rooms. And they locked the track down, and then you open the pit lane, you're out on track to drive around.
Yeah.
That you feel the history as you're driving around. You sense that history of Senna's and Prost and my childhood heroes have driven on those streets, on those same corners, and the buildings look the same, and the track looks the same, and it's the most special place, I think, or one of the most special places certainly to drive at.
Oh, absolutely. We're seeing those visuals right now, as I was mentioning. So it's not just that one, of course. There are so many. You mentioned Spa. There are so many of these really iconic tracks and locations. So top three tracks for you.
I think Monaco is one of them. Absolutely. I think Le Mans as a track, so much history again, but so unique, right? You're driving through the forest, 2 o'clock in the morning, pitch dark, but you're doing 330, 335 kilometers an hour. It's pretty full on. The level of concentration required is off the chart. I'd say Silverstone is probably my other favorite circuit. I've raced there a lot. I used to work at the racing school as an instructor. And I think that as a track, it's always been one of my favorites.
Bit. So, guys, all of you who have questions for Karun, by all means, we will be taking your questions. So just hang in there. A lot of people already, commenting and saying, great photos, and they're liking some of what we're showing them as well. Good to see you both. Hi, sir. Yeah, lots of people saying hello to you as well. So,
Hello, everyone.
there's also Auto DNA who says congratulations on becoming a dad. So we preempted that part. I thought I'll come to it a little bit later, but Kushant has changed your life.
I mean, he's now running around, so Captain Chaos is absolutely flat out everywhere and keeping us busy and keeping us fit, trying to chase him around. But it does change life, of course it does. But it's part of the journey. He's amazingly become obsessed with cars, Sid. So he's
I'm sure you're not
he wakes up
complaining.
he wakes up every morning shouting the word car at me because he wants to see the photos on my phone. So yeah, he's on good form. Thank you.
Well, I mean, I wonder where he gets it from.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that kind of, I'm sure that gladdens your heart a little bit. That
It's a funny one because I never, like we never sat and watched races on TV
not like
together or
yeah,
any of that stuff.
yeah.
I didn't encourage it particularly at all. But I think I don't know, just being in the environment, and I guess there's pictures of cars around the house and bits and pieces. He's just become obsessed with it, which is quite funny to see.
What does his mom think about that?
I mean, there's no choice.
Too early.
He is the boss of this house now. We have no control over what he wants, what he likes, what he doesn't like. He is the boss. So yeah, as you know, kids, you're very quickly bundled down to number two.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So like I said, we jumped to that. I had planned to come to this a little bit later, but right now, especially given the lockdown situation, etc. I don't want to dwell on what the negative of it, but the positive of it is that you're getting to spend more time at home.
I am, yeah, no, it's great. I mean, he started walking in the last 2 weeks, and
Wow.
if things were normal and I was traveling, I would have been at the Vietnam Grand Prix
You
that
would have
week.
missed
So
that.
I would have missed the first day of him walking and the first week of him
Yeah.
walking. So absolutely, as you say, that there's a silver lining to everything, and you have to look for it in these times because otherwise, life can be pretty depressing at the moment.
But tell me, before we get to what's happening right now, what is your typical schedule like these days? I mean, when things are normal, how much travel do you do? How much time do you get to spend in a car, for example, and how much are you in a TV studio or on a shoot?
Sure. I mean, I travel to 18 of the Formula One races in a normal season, so that takes away a big chunk of the year because there's also preseason testing and other bits of filming that happen in between races. So I'd say that's probably half the year is spent with F1 commitments. I spend a reasonable amount of time on the circuit design. I work with a company called Driven International, and actually, two of our new projects are in India. I can't yet reveal where they are and where they're at, but we've broken ground and the foundation for the track have already started being built on one of
Wow.
them, and the next one, the plans are with the FIA for homologation, so that's going along. I reasonably busy with Fifth Gear, the TV show here in the UK and around it's around the world now on Discovery actually. So during that filming season, that takes up a good chunk of time. And working with Williams, the F1 team. So I work with what's known as the Heritage Division, which is basically the cars 3 years and older. We restore, rebuild. I test the cars. I coach the drivers. We've got a whole program up and running. So I work with them on both sort of business development and obviously with the cars themselves. So yeah, at time the calendar fills up pretty quickly, but obviously at the same time, I'm very conscious to try and make sure we get family time as well. Most of my family are still back in India, and so we try and get 2 or 3 weeks in India. Different times in the year they come over here. So you're trying to juggle various things in life.
But tell me, with this packed kind of calendar, what's that one day professionally that you totally look forward to in the year?
I have to say the most fun stuff is the Williams stuff. I've been lucky to drive the cars that I grew up watching as a kid. Mansell's championship winning car or Damon Hill's championship winning car. And also what's weird is now, I'm friends with Damon or, I know Nigel and I can go talk to them about it. And having either before or after driving their cars, I can talk to them about their memories of it. And it's so cool, for a kid who grew up in Madras, so far away from F1, and at a time where F1 wasn't shown on TV. We have to remember F1. The first race they showed was the '93 Spanish Grand Prix. I remember watching it on what was called Prime Sports at the time, and so I grew up reading about these guys in magazines that my dad subscribed to. So now to be driving those cars and talking to those people, Alain Prost is my all-time hero, and now I drove his '93 championship winning car and then had dinner with him not long later and got to talk to him about it. It's so yeah, the Williams stuff is, I'd say, the most fun part of all the different caps that I'm wearing at the moment.
But that's great. I mean, and it's good for you. Or more power to you, I will say, because every time I see something that you've posted on Twitter or whatever, yeah, it makes us all feel great that you're so thoroughly involved with all of it. Still, it's not something that you've just kind of left behind or doing piecemeal. It's really everything that you are still doing, which to me is fantastic. I mean, honestly, congratulations to you on that.
Thank you very much. I mean, listen, I think more than anything, you have to remember, I love the sport. I grew up as a fan of the sport, and heart of hearts, I'm still a fan of the sport. My bookshelf behind is full of books of motor racing, and actually, the lockdown's been quite useful because I've been able to read through some of them, which I've collected and not read so far. And to me, people often ask me, do you sit and actively research the stuff? Because I'm a big fan of the history of the sport, and I'm often quoting and talking about history. But I don't do it as research. It's what I love doing. It's what I'm interested in, and so I've always been reading books about F1, and that hasn't changed just because I now work in the sport.
Okay, we're also seeing pictures of you now, in some of the different racing formats that you've been lucky enough to be a part of. So, I'll play that video again one time. But Le Mans, F1, then Formula E. What was that like? I mean, what was the transition like for you? And then also, what was the experience like once you were actually in the car on the track?
I think with Formula E, it was interesting to be there at the start. It was a whole new adventure. People are talking about in the auto sector, the electrification being the future, and obviously the category came up, and it was interesting. It was a whole different way of going racing. Obviously in terms of pure speed and performance, it was a lot slower than F1 or Le Mans sports cars. But the mental challenge was very high because you had to manage the energy levels and play with that the whole time. So in some ways, it was a little bit of a frustrating experience because you spend the whole time basically watching that battery count and trying to manage it the whole time. But I think it was interesting. It was a whole different way of going racing. You sort of have to think of it as a complete parallel. And people often ask me, about Formula One versus Formula E, and I think that's a wrong thing to compare. I think they will coexist, and for me, I believe Formula One should always be the pinnacle of our sport. The fastest cars with the best drivers on the best tracks. That's Formula One. That is the pinnacle of our sport, and I think that should always be. But that doesn't mean that things like Formula E can't coexist in the same way that Le Mans has coexisted, right? Or NASCAR has coexisted. They'll all just be different branches or different verticals of the sport. And I think it's unfair or wrong to compare them.
All right. So now, speaking of fair and unfair, I think I have to take some of the questions that I've been getting, and there's a wide variety of them. So I'm just going to jump into it straight. Please forgive me for not going in a chronological order or even logical order. But there's a question which is an interesting one from H Cut, who says, "Karun, what is your daily driver?"
It's a very boring Mercedes E-Class estate.
I've seen pictures of that car. Why? I don't remember why I've seen pictures, but I remember you've shown me pictures of that car.
Well, it's normally loaded full of junk in the boot. I think I've had estate cars now for probably 10 years because I don't know, I've always got a lot of junk. I'm taking bicycles out to different places, and now obviously there's a stroller and all the rubbish that comes with having a child that you need to load into a boot. So yeah, it's nothing exciting. To be honest, on the road, it's just a functionality for me to get from A to B. I've never been one who's sought after something exotic or exciting on the road.
Well, I mean, you've got enough of that going on elsewhere, I suppose.
Exactly.
Okay, there's a question from Info Wallace Sports. After the COVID-19 issue, what do you think is in store for motorsports this season?
Well, I think the big question is when can we get started? I think that's the big question mark for Formula One. I hope we can go racing by August. That's the sort of optimistic view at the moment, is late July, early August, if we can have the first race. Already countries like Germany and Austria seem to have done a very good job of starting to contain the COVID-19 situation. So as long as we don't get the second wave, which people are talking about, the potential of a second wave of the virus coming through, if we can somehow find a way to avoid the second wave, then if we can get started late July, early August, we can have between 12 to 14 races, which will be a very busy but a good second half of the season for F1. And I think other motorsport around the world can also hopefully get going in the second half of the year. But on the flip side, we have to be careful. What we don't want is to go to a race and then we get a bunch of people in the paddock who get infected and test positive, and then that will really knock the sport back. So I think it's a very, very delicate balance to pick when we go racing again.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment, but everybody's going to sort of be, I think, perhaps erring on the side of caution, right? And that's the smart thing to do, as you mentioned. Having said that, where do you see things stacking up right now in terms of the drivers, the cars? What's your current assessment, and where do you see it going next year?
So there's obviously a huge financial impact. Sid, more than me the impact on the auto industry on the whole. But then there's a wider industry, right? Whether it's your corner coffee shop or it's your big multinational, everyone's taking a hit this year. Frankly, even in the media, everyone's taking a hit this year. So I think the question is, how do we curb the costs for people to go back racing? How do we, not just for the rest of this year, but I think, we're going to feel the effect for the next couple of years, actually, before everyone stabilizes financially.
True.
So smartly, they've agreed to keep the same cars for 2020 into 21, which will save a huge amount of expense. You don't have to design and build a new car. There was meant to be a whole bunch of new rules, a complete reset, really, of F1 to make the cars easier to race and overtake. That was meant to come in 21. It's been pushed back to 22. There's rumors of people wanting to push it back. People like Christian Horner that I spoke to, they're very keen to push it back to 23. So there's a lot of measures being taken to try and just give everybody a chance to come out of this financial crisis in many ways and just stabilize before we rebuild the sport up again.
Yeah, that's fair. And I just remembered that there's this picture in the video montage that we played out, which I also have as an individual picture. You with Lewis's car. Tell us about that. What was this experience all about? This was last year, right?
Yeah, that's right. I was very lucky. Mercedes invited, so Sky Sports, who I work with here in the UK doing the TV stuff, they invited me to come and drive the car, and we went to Silverstone, and it was an amazing experience. To get the opportunity. Every racing driver in the world wants to know what the best race car in the world currently feels like, and that happens to be the car that's winning the Formula One World Championship.
Yeah.
And very few drivers get to tick that box and experience it, right? Only Lewis and Valtteri Bottas actually race the cars. So to be one of the few to actually drive it and experience it and feel it was very special. Mercedes were amazing. I had Lewis's steering wheel. They ran through all the switches and the different settings that he uses, and they were very open with me on these are what he plays with. So feel free to have a go and see what it's like. The car was just perfect. It was very difficult to fault it. It was a sensational experience, and but in some ways I take a step back and I look at it holistically and thought, hang on a second, is it too perfect? In some ways you think
It's
actually
too
F1
German.
cars. Yeah, I mean you think these are supposed to be the 20 best drivers in the world, so maybe it needs to be a bit more challenging for them and a
Yeah.
bit less perfect. I admit I was driving the best car on the grid. So if you drive one of the other ones, maybe it won't be as perfect. But still, holistically, I did come away thinking it was by far the most perfect race car I've ever driven. But equally, maybe it needs to be more challenging. And the cars were quite heavy now. They're
Oh yeah.
745 kilos. And that's 150 kilos, more or less, compared more to the days when Michael Schumacher was winning, for example, right, in the early 2000s. That's a lot. That's 7 seconds of lap time. And as a racing driver, that's huge. 150 kilos it's infinite. So, I think, there was obviously a lot of things that blew me away of how amazing they were. But there are also some things that made me think that maybe the direction of the sport needs to be, a little bit different.
There's been a lot of clamor about that. I mean, you're not the only one saying this. There's been a lot of people saying, are we getting too far away from what the core of this sport is meant to be? Um, the
Yeah,
debate
it's
will
a
carry
balance,
on.
isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a balancing act. I think if you're looking at pure entertainment, then we want to have those V10, V12 engines, 19,000 RPM. You could hear it before you could see it. I remember when I lived in Brackley, it was 10 kilometers away from Silverstone, and I could still hear the cars
Yeah.
when they were testing at Silverstone. 10 kilometers away.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen now because we've got these hybrids, but at the end of the day, the manufacturers believe in electrification and hybrids for the future, so that's where they've invested. So, it's a real balancing act of entertainment versus satisfying what the investors, and when I say investors, I include manufacturers in
Yeah.
the sport want.
Okay, fair enough. Vijay has a question for you. What's your favorite Indian car, if you have one?
Well, the question, it's a tricky one now, isn't it? Because what is an Indian car now? I guess just, I
Well,
mean, Maruti's.
pick from something available here, I suppose.
Yeah, but everything's available now, isn't it, Sid? Like, what can you not buy in India now? But I don't know. That's a tricky one. I mean, as I say, I'm very happy just driving something easy and practical.
That's fair.
I'm not a big. I'm not fully fussed on that.
You remember Khushbu had promised to join us, so she has, and she asked the same question that you've talked about: what happens in racing post the COVID world? So I know we've talked about that. Amardeep asked the same question about what you currently drive, so we've got that one done as well. But he's also asked what I think many millions keep wondering about, which is the Indian Grand Prix ever coming back. Do you think that's ever going to happen?
The unfortunate answer is I don't think it's realistically going to happen anytime soon unless there's a big government push to do it. And I don't mean necessarily from the center, but even it could be a state government that decides that they want to do it. I think we need to take a step back, and actually a lot of people perhaps don't understand that when we had the Indian Grand Prix for those 3 years, the JP Group privately funded that. It was a huge commitment from them, and I actually don't think they get the credit they deserve, Sid. They spent a lot of money building the track first, and then it cost them 50 million US every year to run the race for those 3 years, and it was a huge commitment. So if you look around the calendar and the 22 races, I think there are only 2 or 3 that are privately funded. The rest of them are all government funded as effectively methods of attracting tourism. So if we can get a government, either centre or state, that's favourable to that, we can have the Grand Prix back. Otherwise, I can't see any private organisation funding this again.
Yeah, I agree with you. A question from Ashutosh. Karun, what do you think of the ways in which the current racing, especially Formula One, can be made more interesting? It becomes a bit boring when, especially in many races, you have Lewis Hamilton just dominating everything.
Well, I get a bit annoyed with that question, and we get it a lot more
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
than we should, if I'm honest, because I look at last year, right, and to be honest, we had some fantastic races. The problem is in the first 6 races, Mercedes and Lewis won and broke away in the championship. But from Canada onwards, we had 14, 15 races, out of which only 2, I would say, France and Abu Dhabi were dull. The others, we had some amazing races. And that's always been the case. I think people look at the past with rose-tinted glasses. In the days of Schumacher and Hakkinen, and even before that, you go Prost and Senna and all that, we had some really dull races. People were winning races by a lap in the Schumacher era. And I think if you look at the individual races, they've been great. 2017, 2018, we had fantastic championship battles. Vettel versus Hamilton. They both those championships went quite deep into the year till Vettel started to make some errors on both occasions. So, on the whole, actually, if you look at the percentage, I'll say 60-70% of the races have been great. And in any sport, whether it's football, whether it's cricket, whether it's MotoGP, because people often cite MotoGP as an example, you don't have a great cricket match or a great football match every time, do you? I agree. We need to do more. I'm not saying we should just sit as it is, and they are. The rule changes that are coming in are designed to make the cars easier to overtake, easier to follow, improve raceability is the word that's being used a lot, and it should all help. But I think it's a bit unfair to say that on the whole F1 is boring, and there's a lot of people who say this. I stopped watching it after Schumacher stopped or whatever, because we've had some fantastic championship battles over the last 20 years, and like in any sport, don't tell me that every year of the IPL or every match of the IPL is exciting. We have some very one-sided contests. Let's be honest.
Oh yeah, and of late more so, by the way, may I add, because we've seen certain teams just kind of dominate. All right, there was an interesting question that I've lost track of, but in any case, Auto DNA wants to know, what was your mindset when you had your first race ever, first competitive race?
So the first race I did was the national championship in Madras in 2000. I was 16, so I was still in school at the time, and it was my first year racing. It was exciting, I always wanted to be a racing driver. At the time in India, you had to be 16 to get a competitive race license. Obviously, I couldn't yet drive on the road, but I could drive on this track, and I won that race, which was cool. So I can't. I mean, in terms of mindset, I don't know. I guess I was just a young guy who was excited to be finally getting on a racetrack and going racing again.
Just about the adrenaline, I guess, that just kicks in, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It wasn't. I wouldn't say it was actual excitement or I wasn't in awe of it. For me, it was the start of a journey. I was always looking ahead. This was only the first step on this long journey. So because of that, I wasn't in awe of the occasion, I don't think. I mean, I think I qualified on pole position, and I remember I had to overtake. Actually, our friend Aditya Patel's father, Kamlesh Patel, was in the race.
Oh, really?
And I overtook him on the last lap or the second last lap, and won. So it was fun times.
In fact, we'll get Aditya one of these days onto the show as well. We've been talking to him about coming on the show. And maybe we'll tell his dad to join in as well.
Yeah.
I didn't know this. This is interesting information. Okay, so you got a question from Khushbu about Indian motorsports, where you see it currently being, especially the future you see for Jehan and Arjun.
Well, I mean, I think first of all, Kushbu, nice to hear from you. And hopefully, for those who don't know, Kushbu is at Kia, and I'm hoping that Kia are going to get a big checkbook and start investing in Indian motorsports. So maybe Kushbu, you can try and help that along. But I think that's what we need,
She's trying
right?
to
We need
sneak in a she's trying to sneak in a Kia question, which I ignored, and now you've given her the plug anyway, so now she better do it.
Well, no, yeah, now she has to do it. So, but I
Yeah.
think that's what we need. We need manufacturers to invest in the sport.
Yeah.
We've seen Mahindra do it in rallying. We saw Tata do it when they backed Narain for many years. Volkswagen are doing it with domestic racing. And I think we need more manufacturers. We can't just rely on the tire companies or the oil and fuel companies to be propping up the sport. The manufacturers are the ones who have links
Yeah.
globally, and they
Oh,
can take
absolutely.
young talent from India and put them on a path to international success, hopefully. In terms of the young drivers, I think Jehan has done a very good job last year in Formula 3. He's racing in F2 this year. Well, whenever we start, hopefully F2 will start soon as well in July, August. He's with a good team. He's got support from Red Bull, which is important. And I like both those boys. I worked more closely with Arjun. I sort of managed him more actively in the past, less so now, but I work more closely with him. But I'm also good friends with Jehan and his father, and they call me for advice, and I see them quite often because they race on the same weekends as F1, so I see them, pretty much every race weekend, and I hope he has a good season. He's a good, hard-working young kid, and hopefully have a good year.
Oh yeah, we've been in fact tracking all of what he's been up to quite closely, and fingers crossed always that it always advances and it builds on his career. And same for Arjun, of course. One of the things that always comes up through all of this, and we've kind of touched upon it as well, is the kind of support that you firstly need from industry, and then from within your own ecosystem, from the family. Because it is like you mentioned, it is a huge sacrifice as well. It's got to be a very well thought through decision. It's not easy. Talk to us a little bit about how it was for you growing up in Chennai, balancing school with this great ambition, your parents backing you, how your brother saw it as being younger than you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I grew up in a motorsport environment. My dad used to race, my granddad used to race. We ran race and rally teams. The workshop was, behind our house, so I spent a lot of time in the workshop with the cars and with the mechanics and traveling with, we were running the JK rally team, so I traveled with them to a lot of the rallies around the country over the weekends in between schools. So it was a great time. It was,
I have the four generations picture up right now, by the way, so you
oh,
can
right,
you can
okay,
tell
yeah.
us who's who.
So no, it was a great time, and we were very lucky to have the chance to be going to the racetrack. Growing up in Chennai, the track was only 45 minutes down the road, which gave me the chance to go there and learn how to drive on the track, and I was driving there since I was 9 years old. So I spent a lot of time and hours there. And fortunately, my parents weren't the conventional ones. They were happy to allow me to follow a path that was not the stereotypical, doctor, lawyer, engineer. They were willing to think outside the box and allow me to have a career opportunity. And my brother as well. Coincidentally, now we both work as television presenters, which is quite funny when down the line. But I think it wasn't something that maybe other families were happy to let their kids do. So I think we were both very fortunate that way. And I think also from a commercial standpoint, you asked the question before. It was tough. I was lucky to have support from companies like JK Tires and very Kingfisher and other sponsors who came and went along the way from the industry and from outside. Um, People like Red Bull were actually game changers for me at key moments. Uh, I think there was a key moment. Oh, I
There's a
see my brother's just joined in.
yeah, there's a surprise for you. I got your brother to join in. So yeah, not that you need me to have him part of a conversation with you, but I thought it'd be kind of fun for everybody else. And so good evening, Suhail.
Hey Sid, how's it going?
It's great. It's great to see both of you. It's been, I can't remember the last time I saw the two of you together in one frame in the physical world. So at least in the virtual world, I get it now. So thank you for,
Don't worry, we
joining
don't
in.
remember the last time we've seen each other in the physical world at times as well, so it sort of works.
All right. So the reason why I dialed him in right now is because he was literally talking about you. So Karun, please proceed.
No, I was saying, we were lucky, right? We grew up in that environment where we were free to think outside the box and do things outside conventional sort of, shall we say, growing up patterns. Especially in India, I don't think sport as a career was accepted in India. Now, 20 years later, it's much more so. Especially, you look at how many good badminton players, for example, we have, or the cricket players we have, and other athletes that are coming along now. I think it's much more accepted today, perhaps, for someone to have sport as a career,
True.
or to work in television. Frankly, it wasn't necessarily the case. So. But equally, my parents didn't ever push me to go into racing in the same way they didn't push Suhail to do it, and he didn't. He never had any interest to become a racing driver. So I think it's just I was interested in it. He went down the path of playing bat and ball sports and kicked my butt in pretty much any bat and ball sport and continues to do so. But yeah, we were at least given the freedom of choice, I think, which is quite good.
But it is interesting how now both of you are involved with sports, television programming, and so actively involved in that sense. So you've got really sort of busy schedules through the year. Sohail, I remember the times when we used to meet on the sidelines of the races. That's the first time we ever met in any case.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes you can't really put this in actual terms. The kind of support that any racer needs, to have that support
Yeah.
structure from the family. Just being there, just being able to, travel with him. How did you see it? Because it's all started when you were obviously younger.
Yeah, I think Karun mentioned it, right? I think it comes down to our parents being unconventional. I think a lot of other parents would have frowned upon the way we were parented. I think in many ways because it takes me back to a story that I always remember fondly because we were in my neighbor's place where we used to ride bikes. So my dad got us motocross bikes at the ages of I was 5 and I think Karun was 9, which itself I think is a would be a taboo to most parents around the world. But we were given motocross bikes. The limiters were taken off at that age, and we were racing in my neighbor's place. And we had a Maruti 800, as most people had at that point. I remember Karun was in my neighbor's place. It was me, another friend, and Karun in the car. And Karun was telling us how he's been practicing handbrake turns and showing us the way and how a handbrake turn should be done. And we're on the dirt, cornering. There's a line of coconut trees on the right. And sure enough, we hit one of them. And as any younger brother would do, I attempted to run home to complain about him, hit my head on the window on my way out, jumping out of the window. That's the only damage I actually did to myself. Ran home to go complain about him and thought, here we go, I've got to win for myself because I'm going to get him in trouble here. He never gets in trouble. I'm always the rebel child in some sense. And here's an opportunity to get Karun in trouble. But what does my dad do? Comes back with him, and I think, man, this is going to be great. Dad's going to be shelling out at him soon enough. Comes back and says, look, you need to know how to get this done so you don't hit another tree, and literally puts him in the car and just shows him how to do the job right. And I think most parents would have had detention for the next month or so and taken away a PlayStation or Sega or whatever it was at that time. But that's just an example of, I guess, the different parenting styles and maybe given where we both are today, in some sense, we've done okay for ourselves. So maybe it's not a bad parenting style. So unconventional, yes, but I think, very fortunate to have that support.
Karun, react to that.
Yeah, I mean, he's sort of told the story there, but I think it's I was thinking about it, and it's not many kids could be told it's okay not to go to college. Suhail obviously went to Australia, he studied, did his thing. I didn't. I finished my last 12th standard board exam, and 9 days later I left for the Philippines to start racing in Formula Asia. By that stage I'd already won the Indian National Championship, so I sort of started making my way up the ladder, shall I say, or my first step on the ladder, shall I say. So I think, and now actually, when it's funny being a parent, I think about it and go, I'm not sure if I'll tell my kid not to go to college, like, or it's okay not to go. So it's a funny one, isn't it? But I think you have to treat each situation as it comes and each circumstance as it comes. I have several friends who've gone off and done degrees and done their masters in one path, and then they're going off and made a whole career for the last 20 years in a totally different direction. So, for no second am I saying that what we did was right or what the way we lived our life was the be all and end all. But I think it's important to have flexibility in life, and I think that's really important. There are people out there who are academics. My wife is one of them. I think given the opportunity, she'll go off and do a mathematics degree in Oxford tomorrow. She's an academic. But to each their own. I think it's important to have flexibility.
She's totally balancing it out for you.
I think also what's important today is that I think with sport, a lot of parents think that you can only be a sportsman or woman, right? And that's your point of success. But I think when you look at the way sport is organized today, there's jobs from so many different avenues, right? You could be a marketing expert, you could be a physiotherapist, you could be an engineer. There's 20 different job opportunities within sport itself, and I think that's where you've got to understand that sport, even in India, has become more professional. I mean, I would have never thought in my wildest dreams I'd be a pro kabaddi analyst, right? So it's something that's just changed in the country, and I think that's something that a lot of parents have to start adapting to when a child says, hey, I want to pursue a career in sport. There's still ways to go about it. Even being a data analyst in sport today is a huge job. So there's ways to go about it and actually find your own footing within the sports atmosphere without being a sportsman or woman yourself.
Yeah, true. And I'm going to ask a very cliched question to each of you now. So, Suhail, first to you, is something that I guess many people would like to know. Your most special memory when you were traveling, with Karun while he was racing. Anything that stands out as one like a special day or a special moment?
Well, we were trading pictures from Le Mans today, weren't we, on WhatsApp? Yeah. We found pictures from our first trip to Le Mans in 2012.
I've got to say that was a legendary trip. I mean, I think for all of us, and look, Karun got a great result on track, but I think it was a bunch of, some of our closest friends and guys that were growing up actually racing those very motocross bikes and the racing next door in my neighbor's place. It was that bunch of guys who we all grew up racing together, watching with painted faces on our chests and faces, watching Mansell or Damon Hill or anyone else, and watching Karun as a chubby kid on that bike at that point, seeing suddenly Karun at the Le Mans 24 Hours. And I mean, it's also an experience. I think Le Mans, I've been to a lot of the Grand Prix like Monaco and Monza and the great ones as most people would go to, and I love Melbourne as a Grand Prix. But I think Le Mans was still a very special experience because at 3 a.m, you're seeing 1,000, 2,000 people come through the paddock, right? I mean, you were there, Sid. I mean,
my friends, Suhail and my friends spent most of that 24 hours at the bar, but so I'm not sure how many people they saw.
Maybe that's why it was so special.
Yeah.
That's what got them through the 24 hours. All right, so the cliched question for you then, Karun, is that when you watch him today, especially with all the cricket programming and some really high-profile stuff, do you still tend to? Does the older brother still kick in? Do you critique him? Since you're doing the same thing.
I think we critique each other. I'm sure he's going to send me a WhatsApp after this saying that the computer was in the wrong place and the webcam was in the wrong place and I had too much headroom or this and the other.
I've got to say I started my broadcasting career before he did, so I do have some ability to maybe go at him, but no, we do go at each other a little bit. It helps.
Yeah, no, I think at the end of the day, the one thing he's very good at is the research. When he does the kabaddi stuff, I remember he was working in Bombay once, and I bumped into, we had dinner together basically at Bombay airport, and he had this file with all the stats on all of these players, and he sort of mugged all of these stats up for every player in that kabaddi league. And at the time, this is when I think this is the first year or the second year of the league, and it was starting to build up. But he works very hard at his research, and I think in terms of that, He's very good. The one thing we, as a family, I think we're always trying to remind him is to speak slower because he gets so excited, so carried away. He's, it's like one of those sort of Japanese bullet trains. The words are coming flying out of his mouth. So that's often what we have to remind him.
I have to say, when you jump from pro kabaddi to cricket, it's a much slower pace that you got to move at. So I'm in pro kabaddi mode, and then when you move from there, I think it takes time to just peace out, which is it's a valid one.
Yeah, I can understand that completely. And you know what? I've seen you doing both. So, firstly, hats off to you. I think you do a great job. And of course, Karun has become a pro in any case and has lots of fans on all the programming that he's doing. By the way, we had our old friend Khushbu, who's been a part of the viewing audience today. So, Suhail, I know you had missed that when you hadn't yet joined. She has a question for you about ever going back to acting in films.
Never say never. I mean, I think it was a strange one that just came my way, and it was actually a bucket list thing, which was phenomenal. I mean, I think that actually opened the doors to what I'm doing today, and I think that was quite an amazing experience to be in a big budget South Indian film, which is, as they say, mass in Tamil Nadu with Ajit, who's one of the biggest stars in the industry, Tamanna, Santanam, some of the biggest stars. I mean, it was shooting for 100 days across the country, and it was an experience like nothing else. So, look, never say never. I think it's an interesting one. If something interesting does come my way in that space, it's something I do enjoy. I love theatre and acting, and I think being with Star Sports for 6 years now has only made me more comfortable with the camera. So, who knows?
Karun, has anybody ever approached you in the past?
No, I think that they're too smart to do that.
Somehow I don't believe you. I've seen your antics off camera. So
I have no interest in the film world, in doing that. So no, I mean, people often ask me to come in if I want to do some stunt driving and things like that, which is obvious. But I have no interest in any form of acting.
All right. One last question that I will take from the audience before we wrap this up is from Chetan, who says, what if motorsport was included in the curriculum, in high school especially? And if not motorsport, sports in general. I mean, yes, you do have certain amount of grading and marks that has started to happen. And I think in general, sports has started to become a lot more serious at the school level. But motorsport specifically, would you like to see that happen? Both of you can answer this.
No, I don't think so. I think it's too specialized. I think it's too specialized a subject to be at the school level. I think, certainly at the next level up, there are opportunities as a motorsport degree you can do at various universities around the world. But even that in some ways is quite niche and quite specialized. And I think, I always say to people, actually, if you've got a degree in aerodynamics, for example, and then do it in parallel with a degree in motorsport, there's an opportunity then to at least branch out, right? If the jobs aren't there in motorsport, and if you're not able to get those doors open, you've got an opportunity in the aviation industry, for example, or something else. So I think you have to be quite careful at a young age to, it's motorsport as a subject would be very, very specialized. But on the flip side, I think certainly, say engineering-based degrees, whether it's fluid dynamics, whether it's electrical. Frankly, you look at the future now with electrification and things like that. Whether there's an opportunity to do powertrains and study the variety of power generation opportunities, hydro, electric, hydrogen, etc. Yeah, I think something like that could be a more viable and more sensible option for we're talking people under the age of 17, right?
Yeah. Suhail?
Yeah, I think, as Karun said, I think motorsport is far more specialized, and it also comes in later. You see a lot of placements being done by, say, Renault, Mahindra, and the likes of those anyway in the country now, right? So there's a lot of scope for engineering students perhaps at a later stage. But look, there is a push within India, and I've been on a few panels and talking to the industry as such on sport being included into curriculum, and I think we're not far from it, because I know there's been a huge push from the sports minister, not just Rathore, but also now Kiran Rijiju, to actually make that a mandate, and they are doing it actively. I think sports like kabaddi, for instance, athletics and football are being given a proper push to actually be included a bit more, to also push the Indian side of the sport to regen it a bit. Sports like that have become cool again. So I think, there is a push more from just the fitness angle. I think to make India fit again is the cliche that's being used. But I think just to create a sporting culture within the country. If we want to see Olympic medalists, if we want to see us become a sporting nation, I mean, I spent time in Australia playing cricket there for 4.5, 5 years, and you just see a difference in the culture, right? It's just a very different culture overall. And I think if that culture has to come into India, it's got to start from the school level from a pretty young age. So, I hope that at the grassroots level, there is a bit of a push for, an inclusion of sport. I don't know how much marks for sports could be, imbibed there. But, I think certainly part of some form of curriculum there.
In fact, that was a campaign that we ran, I remember, the NDTV network sometime back, Marks for Sports. So when you said
I
that...
gave you a little plug there.
Yeah, it certainly brought back a lot, because I remember how much support that got, actually. And what you're right about is that it's a cultural change. It's not just policy changes that we need. And we're starting to see a little trickle there. I think we're starting to see some changes in people's attitudes. And also, like what Karun was mentioning earlier, that, today parents are a lot more open to letting their kids pursue this, even from a longer career-oriented sort of a way, and not just as a hobby or something on the side. So that's heartening. Suhail, it was great that you joined us, and I hope your brother was surprised.
I was, yeah.
All right, Suhail, so I'll let you go, and then
Thanks,
thank you again. Thanks for joining.
No worries.
All right, so Karun, surprised to see him?
Yeah, I was. I didn't expect to have him online, but yeah, always good to catch up, even if it's virtually across continents now. So it's cool.
Yeah, we planned that little surprise for you, and the thing is, it was in my head, and then I suddenly realized I haven't told him it's a surprise. So then suddenly I was like, "Don't tell him!" Don't. I was like, "What if he mentions it to you in a message or something?" But no, it was good of him to come. And one last thing that I think we should leave this with is that there are so many people who look up to you. You have a lot of young fans, especially, and for all of what you said, that it's a different world today. There are more opportunities today, etc. It's still a tough path. And so, for someone who has those ambitions, those dreams, what is your advice for a young kid who wants to get into racing?
I think first thing is knowledge is golden. Understand the sport you're getting into, understand what the levels are, understand what it takes, understand, that it's not just about showing up and driving a car. It's about being able to be marketable and go pitch yourself to sponsors and give sponsors and investors a reason to invest in you. It's about doing the training. When I was a kid starting out, I was 96 kilos. As a 16-year-old, my dad said, "Forget it, you're too fat to be a racing driver." I went out and trained and lost 26 kilos in 10 months. And that became a way of life. Now, even my wife knows if I haven't done some form of training that day, I'm irritable, I'm grumpy, and, I'll go out this afternoon and do a run for an hour. So it becomes a way of life. And I think that's really important, is you have to understand it's not just about the driving. Of course, that's most important. You have to be quick. You have to have some natural ability and talent. But I think you have to be realistic as well. As you mentioned, it's a tough journey. Just because you've won a couple of races here and there, it doesn't mean you're on your way to being the next Max Verstappen. I think, coming back to my original point, knowledge is golden. Understand exactly every level, and the different tasks involved with becoming a professional racing driver.
I think golden words. And while you were talking, I was trying to position a picture of you in your cycling helmet when you talked about how you still like to get out and do some form of training. But now, the last thing I'll talk to you about is what you've been doing while you've been at home. Spending time with your son, of course, was at the top of that list. But you've also been cooking, you told me. So what's that been like for you? I mean, you've done it before. I know this is not the first time.
No, I mean, I actually, when I first came to England, I couldn't cook anything, right? I could make scrambled eggs, and that's about it. And then through various lessons from my mum and my grandmother over the years and all these things, I had to FaceTime my mother even 3 days ago because I was trying to make something and I forgot the recipe. So I still have to make those panic phone calls. But now
your mom's a rock star anyway, so we all love her.
But it's a great way to, honestly, it's a great way to entertain friends at home. I love, we often have 10, 15 people home and I cook for all of them. And And actually, in lockdown, it means we get a chance to experiment because I'm not cooking for anyone else. So, however bad it might turn out or good, then it's fine. But it's only the two of us eating it. But yeah, I've been experimenting with Japanese food. I've been experimenting with different types of Indian food. So it's been fun.
That's a curry, right? The picture you sent me, which I have up on the screen now. That's you.
Well, no, that I was making some chana the other day. My
Okay.
wife's a vegetarian, so I'm coming up with all sorts of different veggie recipes as well. So yeah, I think the one I sent you was I made chana from a couple of nights ago.
So turned out okay.
So yeah, it was okay. She didn't complain too much. So yeah, it's been okay.
All right, great. Well, Karun, I can keep, you know me, I think, well enough to know that I can keep talking, and and we could do this forever. But
likewise, yeah.
And we've done that in the past where I think, had other people tell us to shut up. But before anybody else does that today, I should let you go. And I know it's the middle of the day for you still, so thank you for taking the time out. We've been talking about doing this for a few days now, and I know I kept sort of bugging you about it. So thank you for going along with all of that.
That's fine. No, absolute pleasure, and always happy to chat.
Hi, it's great, always great talking with you, and all the very best for what is continuing to be a bit of a difficult time. I know there's talk about human trials, etc., coming out of your part of the world. So let's hope that things get better soon. And in the meanwhile, stay safe, stay fit. I don't have to tell you that part, I know. And please take care of yourself and the family.
And you. Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you, Karun. Bye bye. We'll let you go. Karun Chandhok speaking about so many things from, of course, a wide range of motorsport-related issues, no doubt, because that is, of course, what his expertise has been all about, and his prolific career, and then even things like what he's doing right now during the lockdown, including cooking, and yet keeping his training schedule going. So I hope you enjoyed this interaction. We had a little surprise drop-in today as well. Karun's younger brother Suhail, joined in from Mumbai. And we've got his folks watching as well from Chennai. So it's been fantastic. It always is fun for me to meet up with Karun, and this way virtually also turned out to be fun, as it turns out. And so before I let you go, I want to quickly remind you of our contest, and then we have to declare our first winner. So I hope that he or she is watching. But in the meanwhile, first, a reminder of the contest for those of you who are new to this.
Log on to carandbike.com/freewheeling and answer a simple question. 3 lucky winners win a 2-night 3-day stay at any domestic Club Mahindra resort. Not just that, at the end of the month, all correct entries are eligible for the grand prize of an all-expense-paid 3-night 4-day trip to Dubai or Singapore. So, keep freewheeling. Terms and conditions apply.
So I'm seeing some great feedback from some of you. Kunal, you talked about this being a great session. Great to hear him talk, says Pandan. The Info Waller Sports handle says, thanks, KC. Karna says it was a great session. Karna or Karan? I don't want to mispronounce that. Deepa Associate says great session as well. Thank you. And yes, I mean, I'm glad that you enjoyed it, because I can always keep talking with some of my friends like Karun. But I want to make sure that it's fun for you guys too. So please keep your feedback coming. And now let's declare the winner. We started this contest, after the show had begun. And so it was our episode with Stefan Knapp, the director at Volkswagen Passenger Cars India. And it was in that episode that I introduced this contest. So that is the set of questions from where we have our first winner. So without much further ado, a little bit of a drum roll. Can I manage that? Let me see. Maybe I can manage a little. No? There you go. A little bit of applause, and maybe we'll even go with a little. Yeah, how about that? Akshay Naik from Pune, congratulations. If it is the Akshay Naik that I remember from, feedback that I've been getting for some time now on CNB, then I think I know you. But let's give you one other round of applause. Okay, so we had our first winner of that contest being announced. And remember that you can still enter the contest, because there's many other episodes where we've asked you questions, and you've had the chance to you still have the chance to go there and enter. All you have to do is go to carandbike.com/freewheeling and just put in your details and answer the question. The questions are also on that particular page there, and they're all multiple choice. They're all really easy. So yeah, get yourself a holiday. And remember, again, just to reiterate, to Akshay, who's won the first holiday, and to all of you who want to win one, we're not going to hold you to it. It's not like you have to travel right now. It's not safe to travel right now. We'll only be able to have you avail of this prize once things are safe. And so in the meanwhile, remember that you've got to keep yourselves safe as well. And last A is silent. Karun. Okay, Karun. I like that. So I will try and get it right. And I know you've been joining us for a few sessions, as have many of you. So thank you. And for those of you who are still asking questions, let's save it for the next session. Tomorrow, I will have possibly a very motley crew together. So a whole lot of my colleagues from the World Car Jury will join me for a discussion. We'll probably have to do it around 9 o'clock at night or so, because they're all in different time zones. So if you guys promise to hang in with me, we should have a pretty entertaining conversation, I think. So you'll have details of that coming up on social media, on our handles, Karun Bike, my handles. You'll have that from me either later tonight or tomorrow morning. And on Saturday, we have another special guest lined up for you. So that's the last thing I will do. I will play that out for you, and then I will sign off. So thank you for watching. Thank you for all your questions. Thanks for the participation. And please keep yourselves safe. Please keep freewheeling. And of course, remember, if you have to step out for essentials, please wear your seatbelts, wear your masks, and don't step out unless you absolutely have to. Okay, now with that, here is what's coming up on Saturday, or who I should say is coming up from me and the Karun Bike team. It's goodbye.